37% of Americans can't name their own net worth within $50,000. Not even close. They know their salary down to the penny. They know their mortgage payment, their car payment, their Netflix bill. But the one number that actually determines whether money feels like a cage or a key? Total blank. Here's what's wild about that. Two people can sit in the exact same financial situation. Same city, same job, same paycheck landing every 2 weeks. And one of them is quietly approaching a threshold that will permanently change how Tuesday morning feels. The other one has no idea the threshold even exists. I want to talk about those thresholds today. Not the ones financial advisors put on glossy brochures, the real ones. The ones where something shifts inside you that has nothing to do with what's in your driveway or what neighborhood you live in. I'm Finn, and I've been obsessing over why identical incomes produce completely different lives. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which threshold you're approaching, and more importantly, what's waiting for you on the other side. Let me introduce you to Marcus. Marcus is a 39-year-old electrician from Columbus, Ohio. Drives a 2019 Ford F-150, gray, slightly dinged on the passenger door from a parking garage incident he'd rather not talk about. He makes $88,000 a year. Solid money, good, honest, hard-earned money. And for most of his 30s, Marcus felt like he was one bad month away from disaster at all times. Not because he was irresponsible. Not because he was spending crazy. Just because nobody ever told Marcus that income and wealth are two completely different games, and he'd been winning the wrong one his whole life. Marcus's story is the thread we're going to follow today, because Marcus figured it out, but it took crossing 3 specific thresholds before his relationship with money changed at a cellular level. And here's what nobody told Marcus, and probably nobody told you. The thresholds aren't really about money at all. They're about fear. Specifically, about which fears quietly disappear as you cross each line. Let's start at the beginning. Most of us grow up thinking wealth is a straight line. You make more money, you get wealthier, you feel better. Simple. Logical. Completely wrong. Wealth isn't a straight line. It's a staircase, and there are specific steps where the view changes dramatically, but the steps in between feel almost identical. You're climbing, you're working, you feel the burn, and then suddenly, not gradually, suddenly, the way money feels in your life shifts. The first step is one that Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner and one of the most successful investors in American history, said should be treated almost like a moral obligation. He didn't say, get rich. He didn't say, build passive income. He said, get your first $100,000. That's the mission. Everything else is secondary. Why would a billionaire be so fixated on a number that to him was practically a rounding error in his couch cushions? Because the math at that stage is unlike anything that comes before or after it. Here's how it actually works. Say you're saving and investing $800 a month, about 10 grand a year, and you're averaging a 7% annual return, which is historically reasonable for a diversified index fund. Getting from zero to your first $100,000 takes you roughly 7 to 8 years. And during those years, the investment returns are barely noticeable. You're doing basically all the heavy lifting yourself. Every dollar in that account is a dollar you personally earned, chose to save, and chose not to spend. It is slow. It feels slow. It is the financial equivalent of pushing a boulder uphill through mud. But here's where it gets interesting. Getting from 100,000 to 200,000 takes about 5 years. 200 to 300 under 4 years. And getting from 500,000 to a full million takes roughly the same amount of time it took you to save that very first 100 grand. Except now, your money is generating more wealth in that window than you could earn working overtime at a second job. The math doesn't change. The effort doesn't change. What changes is that somewhere around that first 100,000, your money quietly stopped being a passenger and started being a co-pilot. At $100,000 invested at 7%, your portfolio is generating roughly $7,000 a year on its own while you sleep, while you're watching the game, while you're on a road trip with your kids. $7,000 a year. That's nearly a fully maxed out IRA contribution produced by nothing nothing but money you already saved. Marcus hit this milestone at 36, and here's how he described it to me in a way I've never forgotten. He said it wasn't that he suddenly felt rich. He said he stopped white-knuckling it. That was the phrase he used, white-knuckling. The constant low-grade grip of financial anxiety he'd carried for 15 years just loosened, not disappeared, loosened. And there's actual science behind why that happens. Researchers at Princeton did a study in a New Jersey shopping mall, and I love this study because it's so perfectly ordinary. They asked everyday shoppers to imagine a car repair. For half the group, the repair was $150. For the other half, $1,500. Then they had everyone take a cognitive test, the kind that measures problem solving, focus, raw thinking ability. For higher income shoppers, the groups performed identically, regardless of the repair amount. But for lower income shoppers, the group that had to sit with the $1,500 repair performed dramatically worse on the cognitive test, almost a full standard deviation lower. Same people, same brains. The only difference was 30 seconds of financial stress. The researchers described the cognitive cost as comparable to missing a full night of sleep. Think about that. If you're living below the $100,000 threshold, genuinely worried about whether an unexpected expense would wreck your month, some portion of your mental bandwidth is permanently allocated to that worry. Not all of it, not enough that you'd notice day to day, but enough that over a decade, over a career, over a marriage, the compounding effect of that low-grade cognitive tax is significant. The first threshold, that first $100,000, doesn't buy you a yacht. It doesn't buy you a vacation home. It buys you your brain back. That's the trade. And once you understand that, Munger's obsession makes complete sense. Now, quick reality check before we move to threshold 2, because I want you to be honest with yourself here. Are you below this line, on it, past it? Your answer changes what this next section means to you, because the second threshold is where something genuinely strange starts happening. $500,000. At $500,000 invested at 7%, your portfolio generates roughly $35,000 a year on its own. 35 grand. Just appearing annually, produced by nothing but money sitting and growing. For context, $35,000 is approximately what a full-time worker earning minimum wage in most American states takes home in a year. Your portfolio, if you hit $500,000, is now matching that person's annual income, and it's doing it without a commute, without a boss, without sick days, without any of the friction that a human job involves. And at a full million, 7% gives you $70,000 a year. 70 grand. That is more than the median individual income in the United States. Your money is now out-earning the average American worker, while you do literally anything else. But here's what threshold 2 actually does to you day to day. And this is the part that surprised Marcus the most. It's not the numbers. It's a sentence that appears in your head one random Tuesday afternoon. A sentence you've never thought before. And the sentence is, I could leave. Not that you will, not that you should, but that you could. That if your job turned genuinely toxic tomorrow, or your company got bought out by people who treat employees like inventory, you have a real choice. An actual, financial, math-backed choice. Not a fantasy, a choice. That internal shift from trapped to optional quietly rewires something fundamental about how you carry yourself. It changes how you negotiate, what you tolerate, how much of yourself you trade for a paycheck. Marcus got a new project manager at work around the time he crossed this threshold. Micromanager. Guy who scheduled meetings about meetings. And instead of swallowing it the way he'd swallowed every difficult workplace situation for 15 years, Marcus had one calm conversation, laid out clearly what he needed, and went back to his desk. Each level isn't about adding something to your life. It's about removing something from it. Now let's talk about threshold 3. And I have to be upfront with you. This one is the most misunderstood milestone in all of personal finance, because people get here and assume the hard part is over. The math is actually the easy part. $2.5 to $5 million. There's a concept in investing called the 4% rule, and it comes from decades of research testing historical market data against one specific question. How much can you withdraw from a portfolio every year without ever running out of money? The answer that kept emerging from the research was right around 4% annually, which gives us a surprisingly clean shortcut. Whatever you spend in a year, multiply it by 25. That's the number. The portfolio size where your investments can theoretically fund your lifestyle indefinitely. So the math goes like this. If you spend $40,000 a year, your number is $1 million. $60,000 a year, $1.5 million. $100,000 a year, $2.5 million. And if you want to live comfortably at $150,000 a year without ever punching a clock again, you're looking at somewhere between $3.5 and $4 million. $5 million puts you in genuinely rare air. Fewer than 5% of American households have crossed that line. Out of roughly 135 million households in this country, we're talking about maybe 5.5 million at that level. If you reach 5 million in net worth, you are not just doing well. You are a statistical outlier in one of the wealthiest countries on earth. And here's what Threshold 3 is supposed to buy you. Not stuff. Not a bigger house or a fancier car or a watch with more commas in the price tag. What it's supposed to buy you is time. Specifically, your own time. Reclaimed from anyone who currently owns a piece of it. Marcus crossed his version of this threshold later than the other two. Took him until 44. His portfolio, combined with some smart real estate moves over the years, put him past the point where the math said he didn't have to work anymore. And here's what he told me his first week in that position. He woke up on a Wednesday morning. Not a Monday, not a Friday, a Wednesday. And he had nowhere he had to be. And he didn't know what to do with that. He actually felt anxious. Not happy. Anxious. Because Threshold 3 exposes something nobody warns you about. It removes the last excuse. The last external thing you can point to and blame for not living the life you actually want. Up until this point, there's always a rational reason you can't do the thing. Can't travel because I need the income. Can't start the side project because I need the job security. Can't spend more time with the people I love because I have responsibilities I can't walk away from. Threshold 3 takes all of those away. And what's left is just you and the life you actually choose. Research on happiness and money, and this has been studied extensively, shows something that initially looks contradictory. For years, the conventional wisdom was that happiness flatlines at a certain income level, that past a certain point, more money simply stops moving the needle. Then more recent research tracked real-time mood reports from thousands of people and found that wasn't quite right, that for most people, happiness genuinely continued to rise alongside income and wealth. So who's right? Turns out both. The nuance is this. For people who are already reasonably content, the roughly 80% of the population who have a foundation of psychological well-being, yes, more wealth keeps producing more happiness. But for the 20% who are genuinely struggling emotionally, money relieves suffering up to a point, and then it stops. Because their unhappiness was never really about money in the first place, and no portfolio size on earth can fix a problem that money didn't cause. That's the trap hiding inside Threshold 3.
The people who arrive there and feel empty are the ones who were treating the number as the destination. The people who arrive and feel free are the ones who were treating the number as a vehicle. A vehicle to buy back the one resource that is genuinely, mathematically finite. The hours of your actual life. Threshold 1 bought Marcus a quiet mind. Threshold 2 bought him options. Threshold 3 bought him Wednesdays. All of them. Every single one. Now, if you're sitting there thinking you're nowhere near any of this, maybe you're staring down debt, or you're just starting out, or that first 100,000 feels like it's on the other side of a mountain, I need you to hear this clearly. The slowest, most discouraging, most thankless stretch of this entire staircase is the climb to the first 100,000. Every person who ever built real wealth went through that exact same slog. And here's the brutal, honest truth about that stretch. Almost everyone who quits right there. Right before the snowball reaches the top of the hill and starts rolling on its own. The people who make it through don't do it because they're smarter. They do it because they decide the boring, automated, unglamorous process of saving and investing every single month is non-negotiable, regardless of how slow it feels. You don't have to be a genius. You just have to be stubborn. And the most important reframe I can leave you with today is this.
We have been trained by culture, by social media, by every conversation at every dinner party to measure ourselves by income. What do you make? What's the salary? What did you get for a raise? But income is just water flowing through your hands. Net worth is what's actually left in the bucket. Marcus makes a perfectly normal electrician's income. Always has. But Marcus understood eventually that the game isn't about how fast the water flows. It's about how deep the bucket gets. So here's my one question for you, and I genuinely want to know because I read every comment. Which of these three thresholds are you actively working toward right now? The 100,000? The 500,000? Somewhere past that? Drop it in the comments. Tell me where you're at in the climb. And if you're ready to get serious about crossing that first threshold the fastest way possible, there's a video I put together that goes deep on the exact moves. No fluff, no filler. It's right there on your screen. Go watch it next. You've got this.